elections. So we are working in different fields. We work on environment, human rights, gender. In the latest couple of 2 years, we started working on gender. So we try to attract our stakeholders by operating these fields. For our stakeholders, we are working with several regional CSOs. We have partnership with almost, let's say, 86 regional CSOs. We have our iWatch Army. We call them iWatch Army. Actually, we have an army of almost between 400 and 800 armies, volunteers who used to assist us, especially when we worked to monitor and observe the elections in Tunisia. So these stakeholders, actually two, I forgot, we are working with students. We try to invest in students. We are working with high school students, university students, middle school students. So we have iWatch Campus. It's a network of university students, which have almost 320 students who are active and have, let's say they are our Vox Populi defenders in those universities. We have also our high school students and middle school students who are actually being active in their clubs in the schools, who are led by our alumni of teachers who are already graduates from the integrity schools, in our integrity schools throughout the latest 7 years. So yeah, we believe that investing, if we go back, I rebound to the role, the massive role and drastic role of engaging of youth in the civic sphere. I believe that we are investing and working on mobilizing young people, these upcoming leaders who are now at their desks in schools. So why? Because we believe that the upcoming doctor, janitor, let's say accountant, is now at their desks in the schools. So we have to invest in them just to uproot corruption and to inject our principles. So we are trying to use their language to inject these principles, our principles, TI principles in them. Just if I still have men. So if I can just wrap up. You're killing me, Oya, as always. So, if I can wrap up, if I can draw an analogy. Let's say I'm going to draw an analogy to describe the important role of youth in the civic engagement and the civic sphere. I'm into cars, so if we can, I'm gonna pitch the example of the cylinder. Yes, I am into cars. Why are you laughing? So it's not weird. So I'm going to use the example of the cylinder block or the engine block. I don't know how you're calling it here. So the engine block is one of the most centered components in your cars. So it has a massive impact on the lubrication, the temperature control, I think the stability too of the car. So it drastically accommodates what we call the crankshaft mechanism, which consists on converting the reciprocating motion, it's like that, into a rotation motion. So we are, as a civil society activists or internationals or big elephants, are in the uproot reciprocating motion. And we are pushing our youth to ensure the sustainability of our principles, of our endeavors to build on our experiences, hurdles, mishaps. So, yes, you're standing up so I can sit. Yeah. So I think that's it. Just to signalize one last point, I think this sort of mechanism depends on certain maintenance. So if we are working on an untainted maintenance to ensure the good proceeding of our cars, here in this case, as activists or as, let's say international organizations or regional organizations, we are abided to pay attention to certain variables and factors to ensure the retention of our people, our young people, and the sustainability and the continuity of our mission as defenders of democracy.
Defenders, army,
Yeah.
coming from army,
Thank you.
Tunisian army of watchers. Okay, let's hear from Kay from Madagascar, and let's go back to the question of why. Sure. Why should we include youth more and more every day for this fight?
Thanks, Oya, and hey again. For me, it's so where should I stand? Maybe here. Fine. All right. The answer is very simple to me. First of all, it's about inspiration. Anti-corruption is not an easy job. It's and more than a job, it is an engagement. And for anti-corruption fighters, the ones who are within TI or outside TI, sometimes you feel frustrated and you feel tired and exhausted because it's not easy on an everyday basis. Sometimes you feel like you want to give it up and want to stop. So I think that young people working with young people and including them into the fight, first of all, gives you more energy and refreshes like your will to fight. You are keen to fight it when you have young people standing beside you. That's the first thing, more inspiration. Then creativity, because once again, anti-corruption is not an easy job. And you know, corrupt people know how you operate. What is your strategy? So you have to be creative every day, like what are we going to invent next, to create next, to tackle this curse? We need creativity, and young people are full of creativity. I don't say that, you know, older people are like empty nutshells, no. But younger people have more creativity, they are more to give. They have more to give, they are a lot to give, and they are more aware as well of how technology evolves and, you know, what innovative ways of communications we can use, what channels of communication, how to communicate with their peers, because peer-to-peer education also matters. It makes a difference. If it's me saying something to a 15 years old, I have a son of 13 years old. I know what it takes to try to, you know, giving them the right instructions or whatever. They don't listen. So, but it's different when it is people of the same age trying to transmit values and messages of integrity, of accountability, of, you know, transparency, those big words who have to be translated into smaller words, actionable ones. It works well. So peer-to-peer education only works with youth. So I do believe, we do believe in that. And then Tasnim was talking about this army. Yeah, we are also leveraging an army of young anti-corruption fighters in Madagascar, but there is a precision, a non-violent army. This is essential because we have already enough violence in this world. No need to add more on that. So this comes again with creativity because we have a fun army, a creative one, a fancy army, and they can tackle corruption. I really believe in that. Depending on the context of the country, of course, we have many countries in this room. I mean, we all have our own struggles, but I think that we have also common ground. We are still believing that something good can happen in our world. We have still hope that integrity can be born again in our world, and young people are the ones who can make that happen. This is the hope for today, 9th of December, and I think that we are all here to share our experience and expertise on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great. Very good on timing. I appreciate that. Let's go to Cille. And she's actually great example, how youth is, can be included, and her personal story as well, that, meeting with anti-corruption fight and coming to IACC, and as the youngest parliament, she's going to tell us why actually, in your case, worked it like that, and how it could be an inspiration to all.
I think you're giving them too high of an expectation, but I'll do my best. As I said before, I was at the IACC 4 years ago in Copenhagen. I was really fortunate that I was able to get one of 100 free tickets for university students. I just started political science and 19 years old. I didn't know what to do with my life or anything. And then I got to the IACC and I was there for the entire week, and I met so many interesting people, and I realize that it actually matters to speak up and to do something that you can change. Maybe not the whole world, but at least parts of the world that you're living in. So shortly after the IACC, I started becoming active in politics back home. I know that many of the people in the circle here are mainly active in NGOs and in civil society, whereas I might be the odd one out from as I'm from a political party. But I was 22 when I was elected for city council last year. I'm not even the youngest, I'm the second youngest in city council. And I'm very fortunate to be from a Nordic country where we have very low level of corruption, first of all. There is a development that's been going on for quite some time that I've really that's been really good for me, because it's given me the opportunity to run for city council, to be active, to have my voice not just heard, but also feeling like my opinion mattered. And what I've experienced from the last, I think maybe 3.5 years that I've been active in politics, it's 4 years ago I was at the ICC, and then shortly after I got engaged, is that young people and lots of my peers, not just from my own party, but from all over the political spectrum, are in general we're more idealistic, we're more optimistic, we want to change the world. We're not, we value principles of democracy and transparency higher than the opportunity to get power and money and fame, because for us it's extremely important that we have a planet and a city or wherever we're engaged, not just for the next 2 or 5 years, but for the rest of our lives. I'm 23 now. I hope to get to 100 years old at some point. So I'm going to be here for at least 75 years more, and I really, really want for this world to be a place that I can continue living, and where life is going to get better. I want to have the same opportunities as my parents had, and I want to give that to my children that I'm one day going to have. And one thing we really need to remember is that we're not just young people, we're also going to be the future decision makers of this world. If we're not included in the decision making processes now, we're just going to have a harder time later on, because in the end, it is us who are going to be responsible for making the decisions that we're now standing in. And as a young local politician, what I often meet is usually people from the older generations saying that, oh, you're too young, you know nothing about what you're doing, and maybe you should just go back to school and shut the F up. So I'm not supposed to say bad things in here, but what I experience is that experience from a job at a factory or an office or whatever is often valued higher than the will and the engagement to actually try and change the world. And I think that's a very wrong way of seeing these things, because I might not have worked 20 years in a factory, but I do know what it's like to not being able to find housing, or having friends with mental illness, or being worried about the future of the planet that I live on. And all those things combined with, I mean, I have all the time in the world. I don't have any kids to go home to at night. I can work all the time. So it's not giving youth the opportunity to be a part of the decision-making processes is a waste of talent and a waste of hardworking people, because we really, really want to make this world a better place. And when we're talking about democratic backslide, I think one of the biggest mistakes in society in general is not letting young people take an active part in decision making. Not just as some advisory board, I think it's fine, but we need to give young people an actual right to influence the decisions. And if we don't, I mean, it's going to be harder for us to take care of the societies that we live in the future. Because I mean, I like, even if you don't want to, we are going to be the ones in charge at some point. And it's also about representation. We are many young people in this world. We need someone to look up to. We need someone that we can that represent us, and that's going to be young people. So I think that's going to be it for now.
That's pretty good.
All
That
right.
was great dynamism. Thank you very much. But I also noticed you actually turn out to be good politician as well. Yeah. Now we have Peter, because, I mean, not only because of his wisdom of establishing a great organization like Transparency International like 30 years ago in Kenya, starting off from Kenya, but also we believe that solidarity between generations, and we value the wisdom and an experience coming from those generations. I think young people have lots of learn from people like Peter. So let's hear from you, Peter. Why important to engage with youth to fight against corruption?
It's so kind of you to invite me. In fact, I'm about 60 years older than you are. So I'm an old white man. So in a way I should be defensive, because you said you want to have influence, you want to participate in decision making. And many old white men, they think this is very dangerous. These young people come with all their ideas and so on. I don't think so. I personally have made the experience that we need a very diversified common effort to fight corruption. And diversified does not mean only men and women, old and young, European and African and Latin American and so on, private sector, public sector, civil society. No, diversified also means young people with their strengths and older people with their strengths and their weaknesses. So it is this distinction which I think we have to keep in mind when we're here meeting today, to empower young people to participate in this fight against corruption. I mean, for me, young people, of course, have many advantages. And first of all, they are not yet as spoiled, as much used to evils in the world. They still believe that you can change things. Older people have also constituencies, have families they want to protect, so they don't have the courage to really speak up to authority and so on. I mean, I remember when I started to fight against corruption in the World Bank, they said, look, this is something that you cannot change. This is worldwide, this is unescapable, and therefore who are we at the World Bank to try to educate the people and spread morality and ethical values to the world? Young people think, of course you have to do this, because corruption is destroying the world. It's destroying nature, it's destroying development, destroying people, and so on. And young people have still this strong spirit, you called it creativity, they still have the objectivity to understand where there is evil and where you have to do something. They also have the energy. I mean, they can do things which old people cannot do anymore. They can chain themselves to factory doors. They can glue themselves to streets, you know, as the Fridays for Future do in Germany right now. They can go out and really challenge authority, threaten power, and they do it. So there are certain areas in which I think youth should be much more encouraged, should have much more freedom, much more influence, in particular in global movements like ours here. So in that sense, I'm very, very happy to participate here. I mean, I have seen how easy it is to get used to a corrupt world. I mean, when I told the World Bank we have to stop bribery in our projects, so we have to stop bribery in our countries because the people in these countries are suffering from it, many people in the World Bank said, oh no, this is impossible. And they thought I was naive that I was a dilettante, I was romantic when I started Transparency International. But the young people said, this is great. We want to help you. We want to be with you. So I like this approach extremely with my full heart. I also agree very much with you when you say that young people have to learn to participate in decision making, because it's true. Later they will be the decision takers in government, in the private sector, in civil society, and they should learn this very early on, and you develop your own strengths, your own compass, your value system by working for good causes. So it is a very important developmental issue also for society, which we should all support and hope for. Young people have hope. They have hope that a better world is possible. Older people like me say, well, I mean, I'm already over 80, I don't really care when this war in the Ukraine will stop and so on. This will be in 10 years, 5 years, I don't care. Young people think that this is an evil which is threatening the whole of the world, even their future, even if they're far away from the Ukraine and from other parts where these evil things are happening. So yes, we need young people, and they should bring in their strength, their energy, their intolerance against evil. They fight against inequality, against poverty, against injustice. And I think this meeting today hopefully will produce a couple of ideas and a couple of commitments among all of us to empower youth to take a strong role in the fight against corruption. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right on time, just like German, just like all German people. Well, now this is the time that we're going to all discuss this question with all of you, but I will also throw another question. I just don't know if you agree, but we will discuss this. There is a narrative in the world right now that say that youth is more indifferent to political issues, to their environment, to corruption. They don't turn out in the ballot boxes. They don't participate in elections. Do you think it's myth? This isn't a myth, or is for real? Do you think there is something like a youth apathy, or do you think they care about their communities and all the issues, like important issues around the world, or do you think it's because that they don't have accessibility and they're not included into political arena, decision making? We actually would like to hear from you, because I know that there are different studies, there are different facts and figures. For instance, elections in France or Canada, they say that the world youth actually did not go to vote. But in the U.S. elections, for instance, I guess I look at the figures, and it went up 11%, and only in youth, and then it made a difference, and it actually makes a difference. What do you think about it? From the circle and also out of the circle as well, we're going to start with Cille.
I think that when youth feel like it doesn't even matter to participate in democracy, they're gonna be less likely to actually try and get involved. So, for example, you used a very good example of how voting turnout in youth actually rose in the last election, and that's because they found out that if they did vote and if they voted together, it could actually make a difference. And I think if we give youth access to get to positions of power, or make sure that they're not just sitting in some corner advising, but actually have a say in the decision-making processes, they're going to take that opportunity and they're going to run with it. But if we're leaving them out, they're going to get tired of it.
Great. Anybody? Here you go. You? Yeah, but I think you should come here into the circle, if you can.
It's a long trip.
Well, I'm glad that our session is popular, so you have a long trip.
Hi.
Yeah. Who are you? And
I'm Sarah.
Yeah.
I work with Transparency International Secretariat.
super.
Previously, was part of our Lebanese chapter. And it really depends on the context. I don't think youth have apathy, especially not from my region. Youth are being shut down, they're being silenced, they're being executed, they're being imprisoned. And then eventually people lose hope, right? Like when their own governments and countries cannot give them access to the minimum of their rights, to services, to spaces for exchange, they either leave or give up, and then that becomes, at a certain point, apathy, because when you're stuck on survival instinct for a long time, it becomes counterproductive. And this is something that also echoes with a bit, in my personal opinion, sometimes youth are instrumentalized. And people rely heavily on the energy that youth has to give. And it's good when it makes a success story, or it makes the headlines, or the youngest person here and the youngest person there. But at the end of the day, I think that as people who work in civil society organizations and donor institutions, we need to seriously take into consideration the support we are actually giving to youth, and how much access are we giving them for their voices and for them to contribute and to make it. Because in some countries, people are lucky enough to have institutions where they can partake in like local politics. You have no idea how privileged you are. And this is a wonderful thing to see. And it's good to just keep in mind that we need to replicate that across the globe.
Exactly.
Thank you.
We need to learn from Denmark, and we need to learn from Lebanon.
Yeah.
Please, can you give him? Can you come? Come to the circle.
Okay.
You have to.
Where? From? Okay.
Yeah.
Making my way. Well, I feel like privileged to be here. Whoa, look at that. I'm sorry if I turn someone's
No, that's
back.
okay. Leonardo.
I'm actually Andrew from Brazil. I'm a public prosecutor.
Oh.
And I would like to bring some thoughts of mine here to add the discussions about the youth and democracy and corruption. So I was searching while we were discussing here about the participation of the youth in Brazil in the election of 2018 in Brazil. And it dropped a lot. And I know why. Because the car wash operation was on the news for almost 4 years. And that make all the young people just disbelieve politicians. So I would like to reflect on that. We have to be very careful about how we deliver the message of fighting corruption. Because in Brazil, the message that us, the prosecutors, the media was passing to the young people were, there is nothing to do. Every politician is corrupted. More than 2,000 politicians in Brazil were bring to justice. And so the young people just stood there and say, okay, what do? There is no sign ahead of us. So I would like to add this conversation because I think the way we discuss corruption may impact the way the young people will deal with that. Actually, besides of being a prosecutor, I'm a father. I'm a father of a young, 10 years old boy. And it's so hard to get him up to go to his school. You know how, right? And I think everyone who has kids know we have to incentivize them in some other ways that just saying, oh, the school is good for you, you have to learn, because if you don't learn, you go to the university, blah, 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 you don't have a good job, blah, blah, blah. So I think the question is not why the young people can join us in this fight. It's how can we bring them to us. And I think...
We're going to come to that. It's
yeah,
the third question.
I'm sorry. So I think we have to think of making this theme cool. Just like arts, music, just like those we are gonna see, movies. That kind of thing will bring young people to us. And I really want to add that we have this example of a successful young people in politician, but in Brazil, if you say you have to fight corruption, corruption is a war. Who young people wants to fight? I mean, I'm a prosecutor. I have lots of threats on me. Do young people want to go on that? So maybe you have to change some perspective in order to make them not feel that kind of, to be afraid, to be part of this, and make it more like a cool thing. And then we can think of what's going on. What happens in Brazil in 2018, because young people didn't come to vote, you all know. We elected our worst ever president in Brazil's history. And now, thanks God, the young people come again and make the history again. So let's hope we can keep this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there is this perspective that the corruption can also make people, especially the young people, if there is no justice done, I can believe that this could be the result, this could be the consequences. But if there is punishment for the corrupt, for the bad people, I think it's different. And I can only give you, there's an echo. Turn it off. Okay.
But we echo what you're saying.
Well, we have to echo what I'm saying. I can also give you an example from my country that we have done research recently last year, and then it was just asking people how they're going to vote if there is a corruption in the picture, in the party that they're thinking about voting. And it was these young people that actually showed the highest reaction to corruption. They said 88% of the people that we call Generation Z, they said they have no tolerance to corruption. And if this party is going to involve in corruption, they're going to change their vote. It actually gives me hope. And I think this is the point that people really fed up with corruption, and they just want to put an end to it. And if we can just top it up with the right punishment, and if we don't create impunity, then I guess we're on the right track. Anybody else would like to? Yeah, would you like to come? Come in. Can we give her? Yeah.
Oh,
is it on?
Step on your toes. That's what we do, right? Generation. Well, hello. I am Joanna, and I come from Albania. And I loved your presentation. I loved everybody's presentation. So if I can say something, I think we're in the middle of what we heard here meets what you heard there. In one hand, yes, impunity is important. Actually, condemning impunity is important. But unless we tell these kids now, this is what corruption is doing to you and your future, when we go there, we have lost so much energy, hope, lives that were actually disrupted because of corruption. So we need to do a better job of telling, number-wise, story-wise, with our actions, what is it that we do every day that is affecting their future? And then they'll be part of what we are doing now, and hopefully in the future. So let's just meet halfway. You come my way and meet this gentleman here, and we come your way to meet you halfway into the future. That's what I think we probably will have some sort of impact.
Great, thank you. Unless if there is no burning questions, I was going to go to second part. But let's hear from you very quickly. You want to come?
I don't have a burning question, but I have an opinion to share.
Please. You need a microphone, and you need to come here, because people in online also need to hear from you.
Thank you very much. My name is Anne from Uganda. I'm a deputy ombudsman in my country. And my view is relatable to what everyone else has said, especially the young lady. First of all, why young people must be included in these discussions is because, one, they have the numbers. In my country, where I come from, 75% of the population are youth. So if you do not consider them important, if you don't take their views into consideration when making decisions that concern them, they will rebel. And they're very good at rebelling. So it's very key. It's important that the young people must be brought closer to the table in every sphere. In a society, in a world where we are grappling with moral decadency, the hope is in the young people. It's important that we invest values that we have failed as the adults to have into the young people, because they're the future of the world. And sadly, but also more important, is that they're very gullible. It's very easy to confuse them. So if you don't give them the right information by bringing them too close to the discussions, then they will destroy the world. They will destroy what Peter and the team have spent so many years putting up just by confusing them. So it's very important, it's pertinent that the young people are brought closer to the table to be part of the decisions that will affect this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Would you mind if we take you in the second round? All right? You can just combine it. All right? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we come to the second question of our discussion. So I guess we are more or less established that we have to include the youth into our fight, to elevate the fight, to energize the fight. And so, but what can be done to include the youth in the process, and what are practices about it around the world? I mean, I can tell you what we're doing in Transparency International. We actually have a very rich practice of working with youth all around the world. We just took a survey this year, internal survey, and then all around the world we have 25 integrity schools. And then those schools, that could be regional or national or local schools, but they are reaching out to university students, high school students, and they're working with them from their perspective. There are chapters working with only, private sector approach with the business schools, which is good. We need a clean private sector as well. And there are people that are actually working on communities with young people, very early age. So it's actually quite important. It's not only the learning. It's not only the school. When you say school, you automatically think about education. But we don't think it's education. We think it's learning, because we're also learning from them. They're learning from each other. So this integrity learning is quite important. And then at the end, automatically, they become their ambassadors. They come and work with us. They come and work with us in the election monitoring, budget monitoring, access to info, all kind of activities we do together. And it's a great way to include the youth into this discussion, I guess. I just wanted to do this opening, but there are other very good examples from the world. Thanks to UNDP is doing what it's doing in the Pacific area. We will hear from SONJA right now, what they have been doing. Thank you. Let's give her.
Thank you very much, Oya. I would like to share a few thoughts about the values of taking regional approach and leveraging existing regional youth infrastructure to achieve better impact and better outreach through an example from our work, regional anti-corruption work in the Pacific. Just very brief context, we are talking about small Pacific island countries which are spread across enormous area of ocean. And they vary considerably in terms of size, geography, culture, socioeconomic parameters. So we are talking about some countries which are less than 10,000 inhabitants, like Niue and Nauru, for example. Countries like Fiji, which is a population of 1 million, Solomon Islands around 700,000, and then in between we have, for example, Vanuatu, Samoa, and Tonga, varying between 100,000 and 300,000 citizens. One important parameter for this discussion is that more than 50% of the population in the Pacific are under the age of 23. Which is a considerable demographic dividend and something that we have been also trying to leverage in terms of our anti-corruption work. In terms of anti-corruption parameters, the Transparency International corruption barometer for the Pacific, the latest one for 2021, indicated that corruption is still a big problem in the Pacific. It surveyed 6,000 people across 10 Pacific Island countries, and 61% thought that corruption is a big problem in the government. 56% thought that it's getting worse, and only 18% believe that corrupt officials are held to account. So, but one encouraging finding from the survey is that 71% of the people thought that ordinary people can make difference in the Pacific, and this is something that I think needs to be capitalized upon not only by UNDP, by all other actors. There seems to be enthusiasm by the people. So it is against this context that in 2021, UNDP Pacific Office supported the aspirations of the University of South Pacific Students Association, which covers 12 Pacific Island countries, to start raising awareness and influencing policy making on anti-corruption in the Pacific. Just a very brief overview, Pacific Anti-Corruption Youth Summit was held in 2021, which focused on the fight against corruption in the context of sustainable development, and youth chose to focus on business integrity as one priority area for them because of its, of course, connections with employment, with decent jobs, and also with the economic growth. Inspired by this discussion, actually the summit was attended by around 5,000 youths. It triggered actually a range of other activities, discussions, analyses, and what we now even dare to say has become an unprecedented youth anti-corruption movement, which led to a subsequent Pacific regional policy dialogue on right to information, attracting again around 800 participants and policy leaders from across the Pacific, and then culminated in this year's Pacific Youth Summit, again with around 1,000 participants, which was focused on climate change. As you can imagine, for the Pacific Island countries, they are low-lying nations and very much affected by the climate emergency, and it was in fact youth deciding to focus on climate change and the linkages with and connections with corruption. The Youth Summit resulted in adoption of youth vision for corruption-resilient Pacific, which is a commitment by the Pacific youth to work together with policymakers, and it's grounded on the regional anti-corruption commitments, and will result in more structured cooperation with the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, which is an intergovernmental Pacific body, and creation of a youth advisory body affiliated to this structure. So it will become actually part of the mainstream policy dialogue, which we think is in a way really setting new standards for the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Now, from Pacific, we go to Europe, and then we hear from Deimantė. They're actually Transparency International Lithuania. They have very long established youth practice, and then they have been inspiration for a number of chapters in our movement. And I mean, I can talk about myself. We have started our transparency school by looking at your example. I know that Palestine also did the same. I know that's, so tell us about your story and what are the great activities you're doing with youth in your country.
Okay, so thank you, Aya, for introduction, and hello everyone once again. I will be very ambitious and I will try to present to you two initiatives that we are implementing in Lithuania. First one is participatory budgeting in schools, and another one is Transparency School that was mentioned. And if you went to the Regency room, there's a great chance you probably saw our stand. If not, then you can still do that either today or tomorrow. And I would actually want to begin with the participatory budgeting. I was really glad that you started talking about inclusion of younger people in decision-making, because that's actually what we are trying to do with participatory budgeting. Because if you don't know what it is, or if you need to refresh your memory, it's a process of deciding with the members of community how to allocate a part of public spending in that particular community. So if we are talking about schools, school administration allocates either, in Lithuania, it's from 500 to 2,000 euros for students to decide what do they want to see in their school being implemented, basically. And it's not that they only suggest the ideas and what they want to see being implemented, but they also develop their projects. They communicate with their school administrations in order to learn more about, how this project should be developed, how public procurement works, and then later on, after they develop their project, they present it to their peers, and then they vote for the project that they like the most. And then, like, the grand finale is that that project is being implemented by school administration. And what we are trying to do with participatory budgeting is we're trying to do several things, actually. We're trying to include not only students, but also teachers, parents, of course, the administration, into conversation and to build that trust within community. And to first show students why it is important to include themselves into decision-making and why it's important, and to develop that habit of participation. And at the same time, we are showing administration and parents and everyone that they can trust students with that money, because what we've heard a number of times when we went to schools is that, oh, but we cannot give students money because they probably suggest nonsense. And actually, we see that those ideas that students have, they're very relevant. It's what they need in their schools. And it became, as we hear from school administrations, it became a way for them to learn of what is lacking in the school environment and what else students need. It's also it became an opportunity to build trust, because students report that they are more confident going to their teachers and administration, asking different questions, because it is a sort of newfound relationship between them, that not only teacher and a student, but also a partners in a sense. And I might everything that I'm saying, you might think that, oh, it's very optimistic, but we actually had an impact assessment done in several schools. And we saw that after the implementation of participatory budgeting, 8 times more students knew what their budget consists of, the school budget. And also 3 times more of students knew how they can get involved into different activities in their schools. And it's also, I will finish with participatory budgeting after this, this remark, is that it's also a way to build that sense of ownership, because what we hear is that after, they select the idea that they want to be implemented, they feel ownership of it. They save it more. And yeah, so that's it about participatory budgeting. I will be happy to tell you a bit more after the session if somebody's interested. And now moving quickly to Transparency School. As we are giving shout outs, my colleague Sergejus is walking around, who actually created Transparency School, which right now grew into this massive, like, I think it's one of the biggest anti-corruption schools in the world. And this year it's going to be our 14th school. We now have a network of alumni that consists of 1,600 people from more than 120 countries. And the idea of the school is, and what we're trying to achieve with the school, is to first familiarize like participants with the topic of, and to what anti-corruption is. Oh, I'm sorry, Oya, I'm finishing up. Yeah, that it's to familiarize them with what anti-corruption is, and to introduce them with different narratives. And I mean, we all know that there's no like one silver bullet for corruption. There's no set of guidelines that we can all just use in our own countries. So the idea is that everyone, like all of the participants who leave Transparency School, that they would leave with sort of a roadmap that would help them get an idea of what they can look into, what they can do after they come back to their own organizations. Yes, I'm done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. In a nutshell, I mean, because you have a long story to tell, 14 years, it's a really great success. And as I told you, it's been inspiration for us all, and apparently for Transparency Colombia as well, which Claire is going to tell us. They name it as Anti-Corruption School, right? Yeah.
Hello again. First of all, I wanted to say you that in Transparencia por Colombia, we think that young people know what to do. Young people know what to do, and in Transparencia por Colombia, we try to respond to the necessities of young people. And we have 3 strategies, but we can have more. But in this moment, we have 3 strategies. The first one is the Citizen Anti-Corruption School. And Lithuania, it's a copy of Lithuania. Not really, but it's a copy. It is open to a large public, not only young people. But in this moment, we have 50 students of the National University of Colombia, and 24 leaders, young leaders from the city of Medlem, are taking training courses on social accountability, on whistleblowing, and citizen participation. The second one is mobilizing. Sorry for my English. We have launched an anti-corruption social movement, and 5 young organizations have carried out cultural initiatives with children, with young people in 2021 in different cities of the country. For example, a museum of emotions. For example, street art, storytelling, etc. And the third one, and we think is very, very important in Transparencia por Colombia, is using alternative medias and new ways of building community. In fact, you know, in 2019 and 2021, we had in Colombia a lot of protests. And the young people was in the front of the protest. And they used Facebook Live to express themselves, but to protect themselves, because we had a lot of violence in this protest. And use alternative media is a way of protection of the young people action. We have other example, ollas comunitarias, community street in English to translate, community street kitchen. So the young people in the street during the protest organized food for all the people who wanted to go out, to go to the streets. It was a new idea, and it's a community practice in Colombia. And more examples. Thank you.
French. Oh, I wouldn't expect it from French. Well, great time management. Thank you. And I cannot emphasize the importance of our integrity schools. That actually, that are first step of meeting with young people. And I know from my experience that they are totally different people. Like they come and then they participate in 2 weeks, and then when they when they finish, they totally change, because you talk to them about everything, about not only values, not only integrity, but political integrity, financing of parties and AML, money laundering, and everything related to this issue. And they, when they finish the school, they're totally different people. That's, I believe it. They're like agents of change at that moment. And we involve them with our discussions, with our activities for anything, from elections and everything. They're very political. At that moment, they're quite political, which is in good sense, because everything is political. And then now we're going to discuss it. We would like to hear from you also, if you have any other kind of activities around your region, your country, your organization. And so this is about, as I told you in the beginning, this is about including youth in defending democracy. How are you including youth in your countries, in your circles? Just tell us. Well, let's start with her, then we will come to you. But in the meantime, you can come into circles. Yeah. So
I will try to be so quick. Actually, IWatch has mainly orchestrated several activities and initiatives and programs are mainly designed for youth. So we are working in various ways, as I said, lately, fields with different stakeholders. We are working with content creators, we are working with rappers, we are working with artists, we are working with local governance facilitators. So we try to inject those principles. We try to inject the transparency, the accountability. We have also even a meter system where we try to measure the promises of our chief of government, our president, and we try to implicate our youngsters to be our backup to monitor and evaluate these promises. So we even have, let's say, a community hub. Mm-hmm. So where we try to invest in 24 community hubs. So Tunisia have 24 governorates all over the country. So we are working now on investing on these kids, on these youth. How? So these communities hubs, back then, on November 2021, IWatch held the first People's Conference, where we hosted more than 1,000 of our communities. We are talking about IWatch Army, municipalities, officials. We try to gather them at the same place to interact and to build a certain, try to cover up that trust gap that we have between youth and officials. So I don't believe, lately you talked about apathy. I don't believe that there's an apathy. I believe that we can talk about a conditional civic duty, where youth are conditioning that they are implicated, they are in the decision-making process, to have their voice heard, and to be an active person. So throughout their fields of work. So as an artist, as Lane and the other colleagues are doing, so they can even orchestrate a slam draft. So they can denounce and deprecate their government deprecations or transgressions. So thank you.
Our guest.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Mykola. I'm Ukrainian and the former advisor to chairman of committee of Ukrainian Parliament. Like last 7 years, I used to work in the Ukrainian Parliament, and I was
another young parliament.
Yeah, when I was 19 years old, I was officially youngest advisor to MP in Ukrainian history, and like it was happened right after Revolution of Dignity. When I saw like all the last 7 years in Ukrainian Parliament, when I worked with different political parties, it's like your last one I was chairman of the people, it's Zelensky political party. In current time working in Geneva University as a researcher. I can say that Ukraine used more negative aspect against the corruption. And after 2014, we see the level how we fight against the corruption. Because of, Transparency International, because of a system like Prozoro, and we have when using in Ukraine, official during the process of tender or something like that. From this reason, we're more in young community. Even during the latest parliamentary election 2019, we elected more young, politicians in the Ukrainian parliament. From this reason, we know and we feel we're still fighting against the corruption. But if we compare from 2014. Now we're different level, and we're still fighting. And of course, we're going to win against the corruption in Ukraine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, let's go to Isam first. But you can come in the meantime. Come closer.
Maybe I'll just stand here.
No, come.
Oh, come inside? Okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay, hello everyone.
Circle
My
of
name
trust.
is Chofiliti, and I am the board chair for Integrity Fiji, which is a national contact for TI in Fiji. I guess something that I wanted to make a comment on is around tokenistic approaches. It feels like coming from the Pacific, there seems to be no sustainability because project is based on just a tick on a box. We're involving young people just so that everyone can see, donors can see that we're using young people. How do we ensure the sustainability of it? And also, something I wanted to raise was around safeguarding. Young people are involved through organizations, being volunteers, interns. Some of them speak out, but some of them fear because they are not contracted by the organization where the organization can, their whistleblowing policy safeguards them. How do we see that beyond young people's participation, especially around standing up and fighting corruption? Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Isam?
You asked me to combine, yeah?
Yeah, come in.
Thank you. I'm Isam from Palestine.
Yeah, there is a chair, but they're a little shy to come in.
No, it's okay.
Get in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's not difficult for us to encourage the youth to engage in capacity building programs, awareness raising programs, or even in the integrity schools. It's easy to encourage them to participate. But I think it is not such easy to encourage them to engage in our activities, our interventions. For example, if we have advocacy campaigns, it will not be an easy to encourage the youth to participate, or even, as Tasneem mentioned, in voting, in monitoring the elections, okay? So we have to develop our approach to make it more a win-win situation between us and the youth. And for us in Palestine, we developed our approach by doing more or doing our homework first. We looked for what are the youth priorities. If, for example, through surveys, opinion polls, and any other tools. If one of their priorities is the unemployment, okay, let's look for the impact of corruption on unemployment, okay, and then it will be easier for us to encourage the youth to participate in such activities related to their priority, unemployment, or if one of their priorities is to develop the education system, scholarships, for example. So what I want to say that look for the priorities of the youth first and try to look for the impact of corruption on such problems and develop your interventions. You will make more sustainable relationship with the youth.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm going to get you in the next round because we have to go to, like Isam said, he actually opened the door to how, what are, we talked about why we should include the youth and what are we doing with them. But I think it's one of the difficult questions, how we are going to approach the youth and what kind of things that work and what doesn't. And what do we do, actually, do we use different techniques to reach them and engage them to our fight? And we're going to hear from Joshua. He's probably the youngest in our circle. And then Arianne and you.
Hi everyone, my name is Joshua. I'm from Nigeria, and if you notice among the speakers, I am the only one who is from a different organization, not from Transparency International. Oh, I'm going somewhere. Thank you, Oya. The reason why I'm saying this is that first, if we want to work with young people, how we need to do it is we need to see them first as leaders. We need to see them as people who are communicators, they are advocates in the fight to be able to tackle corruption. And for me, I began an organization, an unregistered youth movement about 4 years ago called the NGYouthSDGs Network. And the reason why it was started was because I noticed a gap that young people are not included in decision-making when it comes to sustainable development in Nigeria. So what I had to do was create an initiative that will bring about youth leaders, youth groups from the 37 states in Nigeria to be able to work together, because when young people work together, if you make young people see that they are leaders, they are communicators, and they are advocates for sustainable development, it means that they'll be able to come forth to advocate for issues that is important to them. The second thing I want to talk about is that we also need to know that youth is not a homogeneous group. Young people are from different tribes. They have different experience. So when we are trying to create programs for young people, what we need to be able to do is make sure that this program meets the thematic needs of each youth group. So right now, my organization is going to be working on a program which is being supported by Action Aid, and it's about ensuring that the voices of young people count. And we are looking at young people between the ages of 18 and 24. These are young people who probably they've never voted before, or it's going to be the first time that they're going to be voting in the next coming election in Nigeria. So when we are able to identify programs that meet the unique needs of young people, it means that we are actually ensuring that they are meaningfully engaged. The next thing I'm going to talk about is ensuring that we create safe spaces for young people. If we create safe spaces for young people, it makes it possible for them to be able to speak up. We all know something that corrupt officials, weak systems are things that actually makes corruption to be able to do what? To thrive. So if we create these spaces for young people, if we make sure that they feel safe, you will find out that they're going to be able to speak up. 2 years ago in Nigeria, there was this clamor by young people against police brutality. And what happened after everything? The Nigerian government came up with armies and they were shooting at protesters. So right now, young people are afraid. They do not think that the Nigerian government favors young people. But if there are spaces, if we create safe space for young people, we'll discover that they will speak up because we want a better world. We don't want injustice. We want everybody to have the right things. As Cille said, I want to have the best things of life and also ensure that my children also have the best things of life. It's only young people most times that would think that way. For older politicians, and from older people, they always want to think about what is in it for me. But young people, we are thinking, what is in it for every one of us? And finally, I would want to say that we also need to establish collaborations with youth leaders and youth groups, especially those from unregistered youth movements. Very often times you find out that INGOs, when they come into a new country or they're going anywhere, they want to start up new programs. Sometimes they want to look for those big organizations, those ones that are out there. Well, look out for these youth groups. What are they doing? Because when you are able to scale up the work that young people are doing, it makes them see that they count. Currently, my organization has been registered, and last year we got a grant from the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, about 75,000 euros. And this is the first time we are getting a grant like that. And it was because they wanted us to scale up the work that we are doing. So whenever we see young people as leaders, it makes it possible for us to be able to tackle corruption. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we will hear from Arianne, again, Pacific, and then they have really interesting activities, so they should know, like a camp, a youth camp, so they should know how to approach young people.
Thank you, Oya. And I think it's hard to fit these sorts of conversations in 4 minutes, but I'm going to try. So how do we increase spaces for young people? First of all, we have to make the space, and that's been important for us in PNG. If you look at the Corruption Perceptions Index, unfortunately, as a country, we have struggled, and corruption is a huge problem. So this issue where, you have young people thinking there's nothing I can do because the corruption in Papua New Guinea especially is getting worse every year. And having come out of an election this year that was our worst, we felt that young people did not want to turn up because they didn't feel like they could make a difference. But the issue was that young people didn't get an opportunity to register to be able to participate in the elections. So we included young people in election monitoring like they did in Tunisia. And what happened was that it gave young people an opportunity to participate in democracy. They can't get an opportunity to vote because the system doesn't allow them to register, but they can participate by observing the elections and providing their opinion on whether the elections was free, fair, and safe. I think a lot of the views shared here are all consistent in that young people do want to participate. How do we make sure they can participate and we build a strong movement against corruption? For me personally in the Pacific, it's really about keeping young people informed. If you start to really participate, they need to have information. So as Oya mentioned, we have a Mike Manning Youth Democracy Camp that we run because there is a gap in our education curriculum and young people are not taught about what democracy is and what does it mean to participate in a democracy. So we have a camp, and I'm going to say it quickly. We run them, we bring young people together, we run them through a simulation. We tell them that the government of the day has all died in a plane crash, and they've been called together as active citizens to help rebuild their country. So we teach them how to write a constitution, how to form political parties, how to draft a budget tied to policy, everything that we would expect of our government of the day. And we also partner with government agencies and other organizations so that students have an opportunity to also hear firsthand what that's like on a day-to-day basis to run a country. The truth is it is difficult to run a country, so we want young people to understand that, but also understand how they can participate if spaces for them to participate open up and they are able to lead. Now, for myself, so I was part of, I think, a youth organization when I was in high school, and the only reason why I was able to participate was because there was a very old patron at our school, a priest, who came to the assembly, school assembly, and said to us, I'm just going to tell you one story, and that's it's a story that we hear a lot in the classroom. So you're in the classroom, you put your pen on the table, and you turn around to do something, and when you turn back, your pen is gone. And you ask everybody around you, what happened? Did you see my pen? And no one is saying anything about it. And that's where corruption starts. When you take something that doesn't belong to you, and the people around you don't say anything, don't report it, and it becomes acceptable. So as time goes on, these people start to realize that they can take more things, and no one will say anything about it. And that one story in that one assembly, when I was in year 9, was enough to set me on this path to be part of this fight against corruption. Because if we don't involve young people, and this, old wise man who involved me in this youth movement is really why I'm here today, because he saw the power of young people, but he also was able to connect it to me as a young person and say, this fight against corruption, it can stop with you, but you need to be able to understand that you yourself must not be corrupt in your conduct as well. So thank you.
Wow, that was really inspiring. Yeah, we have to be really good models from there. Then our last speaker is from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a recent example how youth can make change, right? They made the revolution possible, just like in Tunisia and just like in other parts of the world. Let's hear from you, Gauri.
Thank you. Actually, last not the least, as I have a privilege, I hope I can use a little bit more time. Yes.
No way.
How? It was the questions for last 2 decades in Sri Lanka. How we can sustain a youth for our programs. So in that way, our recent, by the way, we also celebrating our 20th anniversary during this month. We have organized a big anti-corruption symposium on the coming 14th. So in that way, we thought how we can engage and participate more youth in our program. So in that way, we have defined our strategic plan 21-25 to engage more youth. In that way, we have divided our activities into 4 sectors: political sectors, public sector, private sector, and the community sector. So based on that, we have defined some activity to attract more youth work against corruption. In that manner, for example, the community sector, in 2016 in Sri Lanka, the RT Act, Right to Information Act, was introduced. So we saw that as an instrument, a tool to work with youth. So in that basis, we have established RTA hub in 23 districts. In Sri Lanka, there are 25 districts, but TISL having officers, regional officers in 2 regions. So other than that, we have established RTA hub in 22 districts in Sri Lanka. All these 22 RTA hubs established youth forum, and we have recruited boys and girls from very grassroots level and capacitate them on RTI and ABC, anti-bribery and corruption, and also participatory budgeting. So, all the youth, all the boys and girls, they are not working, like to work in a similar way. As he mentioned, some are interested in art, some are interested in short film making, some are interested in film. So in that way, we have identified youth and working with them. For example, we have identified students in the schools and the universities. We encourage school students to come up with some drawing on anti-corruption concept. There are a lot of students, more than 1,000 students actively participated, and they have produced a lot of drawings. We can't imagine their thinking level and their innovations. Likewise, the universities. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, our school curriculum doesn't have the curriculum on integrity. So in that way, we have to infiltrate in the universities and schools. We have to work with the integrity matters. So in that way, we have selected 5 universities in Sri Lanka, and we are working with them, not only producing and writing article. In different way, they can produce sort of short film, that is create some awareness among other youth. And, other youth also will work on that. And, there's another issues in the community. The community members are not willing to express their feelings. There are some sort of constraints of freedom of expression. So freedom of expression and the RTA, if we want to draw a line, we need sort of support from the youth. That's what we are utilizing university students. And not only that, we are conducting sort of fellowship program, investigative journalism fellowship program. There are 9 provinces in Sri Lanka. We have selected 9 young journalists, and we have trained on them investigative journalism. They have come up with very impactful stories. But if Oya not standing behind me, I can share those experiences as well. But unfortunately, we have to consider the time. So these are the ways we are engaging and encouraging the youth to participate, and also creating networks among youth that will definitely help our fight against corruption. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. I mean, we're coming to the end, and actually in 5:30 there is a fireside chat with Secretary Blinken, and we should slowly wrap it up. And there was one lady from here who would like to say something. I could give her the last minute, and then I'll wrap it up. Come in.
Thank you. There? Oh my God. Hi everyone, I'm Maria Paula. I come from Colombia, the TI chapter in Colombia. I think that this conversation is great because we are working so hard with young people, and one of the strategies that not only us as the TI chapter, but the civil society is working on the awareness of people and the youth. So they're doing a lot of performances and all these things that makes them say, okay, that's how corruption affects you, and this is the way that it manifests and exists. So I think that it's a great way because youth doesn't know exactly how corruption manifests or how they act. So I feel like the awareness is like one of the key, and using the same languages and the social media, let them talk about and see their perspectives and thoughts. So that was all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, before we wrap up, 1 minute, just 1 minute. Come on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khaled. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I'm here just pretty much to represent myself.
All right, you made it. You made it here.
I made it here. So I just want to say it's really a great honor, and thank you very much for all of your contributions. One thing I do want to bring to light, something that might be good to consider when we talk about these ideas, is this concept of social engineering and pretty much enabling young people to come to the table. Something to consider is when we are putting up these plans together, how are we limiting the barriers of entry for young people? Something important, especially when we talk about the fight against corruption, it's usually framed as us versus them, we're taking out the bad guys. And for the majority of young people, especially in the world we live in, where levels of stress are very high, it's very easy for people to go into this phase of a shutdown effect, where they find the situations too intimidating. So I guess in terms of, if I was to pitch one form of idea in terms of how we can probably bring a bit of young people to the table, I would say similar to how we probably run hackathons, it's probably not the right word for it, but policy drafting-a-thons. So instead of like how we say, when we just, instead of limiting it to certain think tanks, to use that idea of essentially creating that trans network of community, pretty much enabling between government, civil society, and I guess journalism and things like that, bringing them into the table to create pragmatic and practical solutions. So similar how the private industry takes advantage of the young people to come up with new innovative ideas to grow their businesses, we could probably use that same idea as well to employ, I guess, in the policy and government space. And I guess I'll keep it there for there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, it was a lively discussion. I'm sorry, I have to wrap up. We really, because there is a security, I guess, security check, and we have to leave in a minute. And I'm really sorry about that. What I'm going to say after this lively discussion, and we will certainly continue, because there are a number of other questions we didn't even touch, and then we should definitely come up with solutions on that. I mean, go back to the first question, defending democracy and who is to include. I think youth is the great candidate for that, not only because of their, idealism, energy, and then the capacity if you provide the space for them. But also they are the underdog, they are the disadvantaged, and then they are the most invested in these values of the democracy that is offering to us. And I just would like to close it one thing that Kurt Cobain said, that duty of the youth is to challenge to fight against corruption and for a just, better world for all. I think that's all we can ask from our fight all together. And thank you very much for coming and participating. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. All right. You're welcome.